Hello and welcome back to another one of my videos. Today's a big day. I have been wanting to wait until the FAQ and Errata came out to kind of continue with my Seraphon Tactics series. There's been so many things going on with the world and all, and I hope all of you are staying as safe as you can while the world goes a little nuts. And we can instead talk about plastic little miniature armies that we paint to fight other miniature soldiers with. Anyway, so big FAQ and everything dropped today. We're going to talk about what's in it, what it all means, and maybe some clarifications if you don't quite understand what the answer might mean. First off, the errata. I will say, all in all, this is a pretty simple errata, such as this first one, Ways of the Seraphon. It's now at the start of the hero phase, you pick your friendly Seraphon wizard. I wish there was a little bit more clarification here, as the wording is a little bit odd when it comes to when you give the +1. Do you just give +1s to just cast, and then if you try and unbind, you don't get a +1? I read it as you get +1 to everything all the time, and I think that's what GW might mean. One thing I will say at the outset of this, before we get too much deeper, is with the Carriage and Overlords, they did FAQ the FAQ within like a week. So we may get something further. We shall see if the pressure continues to mount for certain questions. So this first one is just now at the start of the hero phase, you pick the wizard to get the +1 to everything. Not that big a deal. The Dracothian's Tale is again kind of just a wording clarification that you put them in reserve when you're deploying before the battle begins. That makes sense. Parting Shot, this was a big one. This is a big one actually, because the way the rule is written in the book, you could have a skink anywhere on the field and it would be able to shoot because it did not specify the skink unit was what had to be charged. Now it says, okay, if you have skinks or chameleon skinks, if they are the ones that get charged, then you can do this command ability and make them shoot and then potentially run away on a 4-up. Still a really good command ability, but not as broken as it was before. Ripperdactyl Chief, they've now made its command ability just once per turn, essentially. The Chief itself could probably cast it multiple times, but the Ripperdactyls themselves are only ever going to get one attack from it. So, not that big a deal. Stick it on damage table. There's a clarification. I didn't even realize there was a problem with it because it was the last bracket, but it's whatever. This Stegodon Mount is actually a really big deal. They fixed it, so that way relics and other things can actually be taken by the Skink Chief, and it all will function as it should. So good change here, excellent change. The next change, though, is a little perplexing, because it's for the Engine of the Gods, and it does specify that it is now commanded by a Skink Priest. Now, Skink Priest is bolded here, but it does not mention that it now has the Skink Priest keywords, because currently the Engine Gods does not have the Priest keyword. So even though it's commanded by a Skink Priest, it cannot activate the Engine of the Gods or anything like that. So this is a little odd. I'm thinking maybe they thought just adding this in bold would mean that it has the bolded keywords, but I don't think it does, so I would hope that they maybe FAQ this part in a secondary FAQ if they do so. And then the final errata, technically this is all errata, I should clarify, is the Bound Balewind Vortex. And this one's a little perplexing too, because before there was no wound characteristic limit, so you could put the Oracle on it, but they've now said no, you can't do that because now you have 9 or less on the Balewind. But it's odd because the normal Balewind is 7, and anything that can be put on the Balewind that's a Seraphon Wizard is going to be 7 or less. Slans are the most wounds at 7, then you have the Skinks at 5, and so it's odd that it's 9. And the Bound Balewind is specifically only castable by Seraphon Wizards, so unless there's some obscure Seraphon Wizard from like Forge World or something with 9 wounds, I don't know why it's 9. Like, why not make it 7 like in the normal Balewind? So, I don't know. I don't know. But that's what they wrote. So there's that. There's the errata. Now for the FAQ portion. This one has some bonkers stuff in it. So they clarify that slants and oracles can only carry out one celestial conjuration in the hero phase, so they say no. And with the way the question's worded, can a Slan or Oracle carry out more than one? So it's talking about both. So can either or do one more of each? And the answer is no. This makes sense. I mean, technically, with how it was written, you could give up all your spells because it's like, well, you never cast your first spell. But this was clearly not what they intended. They just intended the Slan could give up one spell, the Oracle could give up one spell, and they reduced their spell count by one, but that's it. So you get 2d3 for each Slan or Oracle you have. So, well, 1d3 for each, I should say. So, cool, good clarification. Can you take both normal endless spells and bound endless spells? The answer is yes. Excellent. I thought that was pretty clear in the rules, but I guess some people were not too clear on that, so they just clarify, yep, you can take both versions, either or, but they do clarify. This is also another thing that if you just read the Malign Sorcery book, it was very clear, but when it comes to endless spells, you cannot take the same model more than twice. So when they ask, can you take a regular Purple Sun and a bound endless spell and a bound Purple Sun in the same army? And the answer is no. You can only have one model of a certain endless spell type. So, good clarifications if you don't have the actual Malign Sorcery book itself, which is fine. Then it asks, can you use the Parting Shot on any Fangs of Sortek, Skink, or Skinks? This is kind of another one. This is one I'm almost certain is like, man, that's kind of a wasted question, because it's very clear from how the command was written that, yeah, it bolded Skink for keyword, but then it would say you can only put it on Skink units that are from the Skink War Scroll or the Command Skink War Scroll. So it was very specific. So I don't know, I feel like this is a wasted question, wasted space, where another very important question could have been asked. Does the Coalesce Battle trait Scaly Skin apply to Mortal Wounds? The answer is no, which makes sense because Mortal Wounds aren't one attack. You do one Mortal Wound at a time, so technically it's always one damage, so that just makes sense. Can enemy units garrison Realm Shapers? Yes, again, this makes sense with how the rule's been written. It's just kind of a bummer because the way the Realm Shaper works, and I'll just spoil it now, the Realm Shaper hashtag shelve the pyramid is kind of going to trend. It's not a good terrain piece. You could bring it, I guess, but then your opponent could potentially garrison it, and so if you want to play hardcore, people aren't probably going to bring it, which is a shame. I love the model. But they do clarify Seraphon Wizards can cast endless spells from the Realm Shaper engine. That makes sense. And then they ask, well, what happens with the Balewind? And they do specify that essentially what happens is that the Balewind overrides the garrisoning, and you put the Balewind outside of the Realm Shaper engine, and then you place your wizard on top of the Balewind. So you can't be garrisoned and on a Balewind at the same time. So one overwrites the other, essentially. Which, given the rules, makes sense. I guess everyone was just kind of hoping that I could be in a pyramid on top of a whirlwind, on top of a floaty chair for all the floaty-ceptions for the Slan. But nope, can't do that. Then they just give a clarification on Osiric Bone Reaper soul-linked endless spells and bound endless spells, just saying the two players roll off, and then they move the endless spells first, which I think is a perfectly fine answer. Often when things happen at the same time, it's usually kind of the fallback maneuver to be like, all right, well, if it's someone's turn at the same time, then that person whose turn it is takes priority. And if it's neither player's turn, if it's kind of this, then you can roll off and determine. So this makes sense. The bonkers one is this last question, and of course they saved this for last, because the 1+ save that broke the internet, the Bastiladon, it actually works as all the, what you could say, the crazies would say. I mean, this explanation makes sense, but it's just kind of crazy how it works. So let's walk through this. So they answer it that an unmodified save roll of a 1 always fails. This is important wording here, unmodified. So if your dice rolls on a 1, and that's where it stays, you don't have any rerolls or anything, it just lands on a 1, that's a fail. An unmodified roll of a 1 always fails. However, when a save roll is modified by Ren, it can never be modified to less than 1. And when it has a save characteristic +1, a modified save roll of 1 are successfully saved. Modified save rolls. This means while the Bastiladon has a save characteristic of 1+, only unmodified save rolls of a 1 will inflict damage, regardless of the rend characteristic of the weapon used by that attack. So, one thing that might also need to be clarified with this answer is that rend does not affect the save characteristic. It affects the roll. And so there is a difference between things that affect characteristics and things that affect rolls. It's really nuanced and nitpicky, you could say, but specifically in this case, it's important. So this means that Mystic Shield is going to be fantastic on Bastiladons, because now their ones are the only time they're going to take damage from conventional weapons. And then if you can reroll that one, well, chances are 1 in 6 that dice isn't now going to be a success. Because the moment it's a 2 or anything, then it becomes a modified save characteristic of +1. Say if you get hit by a rend weapon of 1,000,000,000, a 6 goes to 1, a 1+ is a success because that's the characteristic. So, kind of crazy, pretty stinking good though. If I look at the Bastiladon War Scroll very quickly, that means I believe it needs to take 2 damage, more than 2 damage, before its save goes down. So, yep, so it's fine till 8 wounds or 2 damage done to it. Once it takes that 3rd damage, then it goes to a 2-up save, and then it behaves like a normal save, pretty much. It's just this 1-up is such a unique case. A very sneaky way to create an unmodifiable rend from GW here, because before the Bastiladon had a rule for that, and then the rule went away, and it's like, well, you could have just said it has this rule, but this is kind of I would say this is an elegant solution for not needing, because the mechanic clearly exists in the core rules to do this. This is where the core rules are really important to read on how exactly this works, without having to actually make a rule that's superfluous. So I do commend GW for this. This design's actually kind of neat. If not confusing at first, because we never experienced a 1-up save before, and it's like, oh, well, wait a minute, now we got a double take on how all this works. So to go over some things that are missed, in my opinion, and that I wish they would do, the first big one is obviously, everyone really wanted them to errata the Realm Shaper engine to be something that you place after the territories are determined at the very least, or something, but it's apparently not what they wanted to do, so they did not do it. So we'll just move on from that. The Realm Shaper just in general. The other big one, I'm just kind of scrolling through the pages very quickly, that I wish were clarified. See, all that made sense. So the other one I wish they answered is the whole idea of the Bind Endless spell from Lore of Celestial Manipulation, the skink spell that gives the bound keyword. I am curious if that then makes that spell where the Seraphon player only gets to move it, because the section that talks about bound on the spells and only Seraphon players move bound on the spells is not bolded. It's just, you just talk about bound on the spells as a title, which are specifically listed on pages 96 through 102. So that's specifically, so if I bound, say, a Soul Linked, no Noseric Bone Reaper endless spell, does that override? Does that make the Seraphon player move it? We don't have an answer for that. I am assuming that all the Bind on the spell does, legally at this point, is protected from the Drain Magic spell from the Slan. Because that one also has the bound keyword. So we'll see if that ever gets answered again. Another big one is, where to go? Koala's Claw, the command trait, is worded a bit badly, rules-wise. It all makes sense. Like, we know what it's supposed to mean. It's supposed to mean that when a Source General, or, well, actually it doesn't even have to be Source, when the Actually, it does because it's Qual's Claw. When the Saurus General does a command ability to another Saurus unit on a 4-up, you receive a command point. It's just that the one issue is that it just says when he issues a command to a friendly Saurus unit, that's not a command ability. Like, that's new verbiage. I mean, we all know what it means. We all know it makes sense. It's just someone's going to rules lawyer that to death, and someone's going to be a jerk about it. Don't be a jerk about it, but you know someone's going to do that. It's just a shame. Someone at the big table is going to finally point it out and be like, well, you can't technically do that. And it's like, oh, shut up. Don't be that guy. Don't be that guy. This is one of the big ones that they missed for me, is a clarification on battalions. So the argument being, in the Firelands Temple host, it's an easy, cut and dry answer, because in there it has the keyword Scarvet. So clearly you can put both Scarvet on Cold One or Scarvet on Carnosaur in the battalion. Both are fine because they both have the Scarvet keyword. If I am 90% sure. Actually, I guess technically Saurus Scar Veteran has Saurus Scar Veteran as his keyword, but that needs to be clarified. But it's very clear that the intention's clear on that. The only thing that's weird is when you look at Sunclaw Star Host, where it lists one Saurus Old Blood or Saurus Sunblood. Well, that's the title of the guy on foot. However, when it comes to the main rules, it does specify that for War Scroll battalions, you ignore the subtitles. So when you look at, say, the Old Blood on Carnosaur is a subtitle. So as it's currently written, you should be able to bring both. However, then the question becomes, well, then why did they bold Scar Veteran and not just bold Old Blood? I don't know the answer. And it might be they specifically want you to take the guys on foot. They don't clarify it here. So I'm going to say that you can take the Saurus Old Blood on Carnosaur in a Sunclaw Star Host or Sunclaw Temple Host, which I think is a fantastic option, by the way. Having either additional rend on the dinosaur jaws or an additional rend on the spear, both are really good. So, was there anything else I wanted clarification on? Yes, so Skink Priests with Bastiladons in Thunder Lizard. So in Thunder Lizard, it's really the only way in the whole Seraphon army to get twice of anything. So like 2 shooting or 2 melees. You get 2 shooting in Thunder Lizard. And the Skink Priest's command ability says that you use it in the hero phase. If you do so, you pick 1 Skink unit wholly within 18. Until your next hero phase, you add 1 to hit rolls for attacks made by that unit. A unit cannot benefit from this command ability more than once per phase. So, of course, it makes sense that it just says more than once per phase. It makes sense to say, well, that just means you can't stack more than +1 to hit on a unit. You know, you can't get a Bastiladon to be hitting on 2-ups with its Solar Engine. You can only get it up to 3. But then my question becomes, well, if it's only once per phase, so I shoot the first time with my Solar Engine hitting on 3s, when I shoot the second time, do I get the same bonus? Because technically now that's in the same phase a second time, and you cannot benefit from this command ability more than once per phase. So does that mean I hit on 3s the first round, and the second round of shooting I only hit on 4s? I would like that to be clarified, because that's a weird way for that benefit to happen, because no other army I know of works that way. Like, no matter how many times you fight, if you have +1 to hit, you get +1 to hit. You don't get +1 to hit only once. So it's weird. They did not make Salamanders or Razordons artillery. They are still regular, so you can still spam the heck out of them, which is terrifying. They clarified second on stuff already. See, the Bound Endless spells, now I'm scrolling through those. I think they really answered they went after the Balewind, the poor Balewind. So yeah, and I mean, there's nothing else that was kind of screaming at me that was inappropriate. They also, to wrap this video up, did not make a single points change. I think that's fine. I think it's too early to make points changes, even though we all kind of starting to sense that maybe a lot of the predatory on the spells that are bound are maybe a little too cheap for only being 10 points more expensive. Who knows? That maybe Lord Croak is a little too good for his point cost, but that's something that we can discover as we try and play more. I, for one, have been trying to play a lot on Tabletop Simulator, because my game store, we can't do our game nights anymore until all this blows over. So playing online, that's a great place to play if you're looking to practice. It plays just like if you're at the store, you move your models and you roll dice. It's great. So I need to play online more and maybe play some of my audience a bit. So thank you guys for watching this video and listening to me talk about this. So I think overall this is a good, it's an alright FAQ. There's a few things I wish was more clarified, but we'll see if maybe we get an FAQ of an FAQ. So thanks again. Hope to see you guys next time. Bye.